Good morning, crafty friends. Hello and happy Thursday today. I am excited you're here today. We've been kind of giving you little sneaks of what today's live is going to be about. And so the day is finally here. We get to talk with Lori Craig about the new 32 OLO markers. So that is happening. I am super excited to have her here with me, and I'm going to bring her on screen here in just a little bit. But first, I have a few announcements, and I want you guys to say hello. So definitely hop in the comments today and let us know you're watching. This would also be a great time while Lori is not speaking and can actually look at the comments. If you have any burning questions you want answered about OLO markers or the new 32 colors specifically, you can list those in the comments, and it would be super helpful to both of us today as you guys are asking questions to lead with question. If you put question in all caps and then ask your question, that helps us pick them out from the comments that are flying by our screens very quickly usually. I know it's fun to have somebody who is an expert with these markers here to instruct us and give us all the tips and tricks, and we want to make sure your questions get answered too. So before we get started with Lori, let me tell you about a couple things. I wanted to just make quick mention. We did release a kit on Tuesday. We have a few of those left, so not a lot of them. If you've been waiting on the Doodlebirds kit, this is your kind of cue that we are on our last bit of kits, and so this one will likely sell out, and I just want to make sure if you're kind of on the fence and thinking about that one, that you know that you probably want to grab that in the next couple of days. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to pop a graphic up on the screen for this. We have announced that we were going to do this, and today is the day. Starting on May 30th, that's today, we are launching the re-enrollment period for our combo club. So we originally offered a 3-month and a 6-month subscription to our combo club back in, I believe it started in April. So we are coming to the end of the 3-month subscription. That means if you only signed up for 3 months or you didn't get signed up at all, you will want to either enroll for the final 3 months or re-enroll if you only signed up for 3 months and you want to continue getting those for the next 3 months. So you can go to our website. I don't think that button on your screen is going to work through the live. I see it says sign up here, but if you head to the website, you will find a link to go ahead and sign up for the final 3 months of the combo club. So if you signed up previously, it started April, May, and June are the 3 months, and then the second half will be July, August, and September. So I think there's lots of people who are loving the combo club. You don't want to miss out. I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far, and I am excited that I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow, I get to showcase the June subscription kit that will be headed to your doorstep if you are one of our subscribers. So let's say hello to some people here as we get going. Hello, Janice is here, Deb in Omaha. Hi, Deneen. You decided to do the additional 3 months. You love the first 2 that you've received. That's awesome. Trisha's here. Hello, Mindy. Mindy says, I watched Lori a bunch of times and I always learn something new each time. That is awesome to hear. And that's why, especially with these techniques, that you need a little bit of a refresher and some practice. Having Lori come and give these tips, even if you've heard them before, you might even just grab that one little tip that hasn't quite sunk in. What's the rule for teachers? If we have any teachers out there, don't they say you need to hear it 7 times before you actually put it into practice? It sinks into your head and you actually do what you have learned or retain what you have learned. So hello, Beth out in California. We have Linda here from Colorado. Good morning, everyone. I see lots of questions popping by, so hopefully, Lori, if you're able to look at those, that gives you some ideas for talking points as you're moving through your coloring demonstration today. I know Lori's got some fun things to share with you guys regarding the color wheel, how these new colors fit in, and how to choose colors as well. So we've got lots of info today. And Lori, this is your heads up. Go ahead and unmute your mic, and I'm going to get you on the screen with us today. Hey, everybody, here's Lori. Hi, Lori.
Good morning.
Good morning again.
Good morning. It's great to see you.
Yes, I'm so excited. Like I said, you've been listening in the background and hopefully reading everybody's comments, but we are super excited to have you here today to share about not only the new 32 OLO markers, which are very exciting, but also just OLOs in general. And everybody seems to be really excited about it. So, yes.
A lot of fun people in the chat. I did see someone from Kansas City say they're expecting rain, and it is thundering here. So, if you hear the rumble,
yeah, we'll cross our fingers that the feed doesn't.
I think it's going to be fine.
Die on us. Okay.
I think it's going to be fine. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to share something with you guys that I actually shared a little bit about on Tuesday. And that is a storage option for your OLO markers. And so I'm going to switch views again on you while Lori gets herself prepared for showing the demo portion of the live today. But this is what I shared on Tuesday. And these are created by a crafter. Her name is Treasure, and she has a store called Blue Sparkle. And she and her husband, who is an engineer by trade, he creates these cases that hold different items. So they do have lots of other configurations. This happens to be the Tailored Expression large case. And inside, you will find 2 layers of the OLO markers. So each of these fit 32 markers, which would be perfect for your new 32 set. And you can see I have the one that is formatted here for the OLOs that have the handle on them. So if you like to have your OLOs on a handle, they have cases for that. If you like to have your OLOs where they are screwed together with the connector cap kind of back to back with 2 colors and 1 marker, they have storage for that as well. And then, of course, as always, you can pick up the empty cases at Tailored Expressions. These just come right out of here, and then you have your empty case, which also works great for traveling with other supplies and that kind of thing. So I know Whitney's going to pop the link into the comments for Treasure's Blue Sparkle store where you can find this storage solution. But this is how I will be storing my markers when I travel with them. When I am working with my markers or just in my craft room, I have a little shelf that they sit on so that I can easily grab them out of the little compartments. And then when I'm at my desk using them, I tend to store them in our tool tray just like this, so I can easily grab and replace. When I'm doing lives and other demos, this is how I usually grab my markers. I have all of the new 32 here. I'm going to pop a graphic up on the screen so you guys can see those beautiful colors that just came out. We did launch them last week, Thursday, but they sold out rather quickly within less than a day. So I think it was maybe like 6 hours or something like that. But we now have them back in stock. So you can get that. If you search the website for new 32, you will find those markers bundled together as a set, and you can grab them all with 1 click of your mouse. So now let's turn it over to Lori. She's got her desktop set up, and she's going to start chatting with us about the new 32. And Lori, I'll keep my eye on the chat and let you know as you're going along if we've got any pressing questions.
Awesome. So I can see I am set up. Wow, it went to big screen. So I have just another picture of the new 32, and I'm happy to be here and talk about that. I love color. It is just, I think it's what makes us gives us, each of us, a little bit of individuality in our crafting and our creating to be able to choose our own colors and make our images come to life. And so really excited about the new color release. OLO was originally released with 120 colors, and that was probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And this edition is 32 new colors. And one of the things that's really nice about this edition is we really went off of customer feedback when we looked at the color wheel and decided what to add into the line. I did see one question that said, how often does OLO release color? And I think you'll see another release from us in 2025. So this is kind of, we're not going to roll out 6 colors at a time for you, this month and then 6 colors next month, but a nice addition to the color palette. Overwhelmingly, we were asked for pinks, purples, always, more greens. People wanted more greens, and people wanted more skin tones. So this 32, I think, rounds that out and fits the bill just beautifully, and lets us, really look at a full color wheel. So I'm working with a couple of different color charts, and we have them available for download, and Taylor has access to them also. But this is kind of where I've taken the new 32 colors and I've placed them all on a color wheel that I have colored in myself. So I love this option to be able to see how the colors are arranged and how they situate within the color wheel. And I want to talk about that in a minute, because that's what helps me choose colors when I am getting ready to do a project. And we are going to do a project this morning, so Taylor's going to keep me moving. But
Is that my job today?
Well, no, I mean, you have a lot of jobs, but it is when you don't do this every Thursday or every Tuesday, right? To keep your eye on the clock. And
Yeah.
I already told her I don't have a Whitney, so it's not like I can yell for someone to bring me something.
I do want to mention before you get too far into this that some people have been asking about downloading these, and we did get those files that you sent us uploaded to our website. So you can go to our downloads. It's a free download, and you can download the chart that Lori has in front of you, and you can color it in yourself.
Excellent. So I'm going to come back to this in a second, this color wheel. But the first thing that I wanted to explain was a little bit about the color numbering system, because that is kind of key to helping people who pick the markers up. There are many vibrant colors. Now we're at 160. And how do you know what the numbers on top of the marker mean? They do have fun names, like, let's see what this one is. This is Aster. This one is Brimstone. So they all have a color name. But if I talk to you about color, I am going to refer to the color based on the nomenclature that's on the cap. So every single OLO marker fits into our numbering system, and it's broken into 3 parts. So we have the color family, which tells me that this particular color is in blue-green. And then we have hue, and that tells me where this color sits on the color wheel. So if you think about a traditional, going back to kindergarten and first grade, and your color wheel really starts out as a triangle with your red, yellow, and blue, and then it fills in as you start mixing and melding colors. This tells me the hue tells me kind of where that sits. And then the last piece of information comes after the period, and this is the value of the color. This tells me how light or how dark is this particular hue of blue-green. So that, to me, that's very key, because when you go to do color selection, it's very helpful to know and understand, not necessarily even to understand. Once you kind of know what those numbers mean, the legwork is done for you on color selection. So let me show you what I mean by that. When I look at this particular color wheel, the colors that I was just talking about was BG 2.4. This is your blue-green. It's going to be situated between blue and green, and it's going to be directly across the color wheel from the reds and red-orange running into yellow. So when I look at this color wheel and I think, okay, BG 2.4, that tells me that it is somewhere in the middle between a blue and a green. But even within that hue, that 2, I can have a lot of variation in my blue greens. So I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by that. Here is this BG 2.4 that I talked about on my first little printout. So blue-green, the hue is 2, tells me kind of where the color is situated, what the depth of the color is. And then I have the value, which is a 4, which is about a middle of the range value. So it's not too light and it's not too dark. I think that when we first start looking at color mediums and when they have a numbering system like this, these numbers that end in 4, 3, 4, 5, frequently that's what draws us in. We see those colors, they're very pleasing, they're very vibrant, and we love that. So that's one of the reasons that I picked this kind of 4-3 range for an ending value, because they'd have a lot of pop to them. But look at the difference. These are all blue-green markers, and they all have a very similar value, meaning that they're kind of in the middle of the scale, but their hue changes. So 0 is going to be closest to a pure color. And look how they get a little bit warmer and a little bit more muted as the middle number increases. So 0, really bright. 2, it's still a BG, but it's got a lot more green to it. And then this BG 7.3, it's a blue-green, but it's really desaturated. It's got a lot of gray to it. And so it changes color and it changes your perspective, and it might even, when you look at images and you go to pick colors out, it makes a big difference if you are looking at a BG 0.4 or a BG 7.3, even though you would pick both of them up and say they were a blue-green or maybe even a turquoise marker or a Taylor teal, somewhere in that range. But we know that like this BG 2.4 is closest to the Taylor teal that we love and that Taylor loves. Very bright and vibrant. So once you kind of understand that, what it does is it allows you to pick and choose markers that pair with that BG 2.4. So if I want to blend with my BG 2.4, I'm going to look for markers on the color wheel that have the same letter and the same first number, and the value changes. So here we've got a very light BG2, 2.3, 2.4. 2.5 is a new color that extends the range, something that got added in because there was a really big jump between 2.4 and 2.7 in the original color range. So on the new additional 32 colors, you're going to see some entire color range families just like this. The RVs are an example of that, and I think the BVs, where you get 3 to 4 colors that all blend very beautifully together. But you're also going to see some one-off colors like the BG 2.5 that fill in some favorite color ranges and make it easier to blend in from the B 2.7, 2.5, and now the 2.4, and that gap kind of bridges a little bit. So when I go to pick colors, what I usually talk to people about or explain is, to pick a color that you think is really pretty on the color wheel, something that you want to work with. Say this YG 1.4. This is also a new color. And when I go to the store and I'm picking out colors, if I'm not buying a bundle or I'm not doing I want it all, if I'm looking through open stock and doing my own selection, I've picked out YG 1.4. If I want something that's going to blend with that marker, I'm going to look at 1.2 and 1.6. So this spoke of the wheel, this color set, is all designed that it will blend beautifully together. One thing about the OLO color wheel in general, there are thousands of colors. I mean, if you and I mean, look at if you've ever tried to paint a dining room wall and pick a specific shade of green or even gray, you know there are there are just thousands and thousands of colors. But my team that I work with, we've been in the alcohol marker business for a long time. So in the inception and concept of OLO, we have a master color wheel or master color palette where everything was laid out all before we initiated the first 128 color launch. And what that means is when you invest in your markers, when we introduce new colors, they are going to fall perfectly into the color wheel. Now, these swatches over time will shrink as we add new colors because you want to make space for them, but they'll fit seamlessly, and the numbering system that I'm explaining to you will make sense. Once you've learned that, new colors will always fill in specific gaps or holes on the color wheel. So back to like this YG 1.4. Say I'm going to color some trees. I actually used this color set this week on the birds, the doodle bird kit, which I think is adorable. It was so fun. And that tree dye, you have to do the tree dye with it. It's so cute. But I use this YG 1.4. And so when I go to pick colors that go with the YG 1.4, this is a very bright color. This is really saturated, really, just a lot of fun and vibrant. So I'm probably not going to pair this YG1, which is the first number, with a R5, which you can see right down here in the color wheel. This is, more like a cranberry, dusty rose color, very desaturated, a lot of gray in that color. And in simple terms to explain it, there's a lot of difference between the 1 in the YG1s and the 5 in the R5s. So if I want to pick colors that kind of go together and look pleasing as a palette, when I'm talking about having my whole card done, I typically try to stick with that first number somewhere close to the same. So if I'm working with a YG1, I might work with BG2s or BV1s, RV1s, B0s, B1s. I'm probably not going to pick out something that has a first number in the 7, 8, or 9 to complement this bright, vibrant yellow-green. Is that making sense, Taylor?
Yes, it makes sense to me. I don't have anybody saying I don't understand that yet, so I think you're on the right track with your explanation. But yes, that makes total sense.
Okay, so and that's typically how I sit down to a project when I do color selection. There's certainly not a rule about it. You can do your own thing. We all are drawn to different things, and there are certain situations where maybe I'm doing a big florals display, and maybe I need a little bit of variation in my greens, or I have some greens that set farther back, and so I want to, get some depth. So I might use the pinks and purples and come down to a dark green. Or I'm working on Christmas things, and I might mix and match my greens and my reds. And so we see that a lot in the holidays. But so what I'm telling you is just this is just kind of a loose explanation, and it's a guide to get you started. But once you understand that and get comfortable with that type of color selection, so if I'm, YG1s, BG2s, I can come over here, BV1s, RV1s. That at least lets someone that's getting started do color selection that's going to kind of all look equally, just have some just look kind of equal on the page. You're not going to look at the paper, and then what you don't want to do is spend a ton of time coloring something and then have your eye go straight to a deep red, right, when you've used really vibrant, true colors. So that's kind of my explanation and how I use the color wheel to pick colors. Once you get comfortable with that, then you can certainly branch out.
Yeah, I think these color wheels are a really great tool. And
Yeah,
ultimately, I think you would be the first to say, you do you. So
yeah,
if you love this particular color with another color, it's not like you're breaking rules and your card's going to be horrible.
yeah,
But it's a great starting point and a great tool to
yes.
give you a
I
jump on.
cannot, I cannot overemphasize that. It's really just a very basic introduction to color for you and give you some things to think about as you are picking up colors and plucking them out of your storage system and setting down to work. The other thing that I would say is, especially if you are just getting started, and like I said, typically our eye gets drawn to that value that's somewhere in the 3, 4, 5 range because we just love that color pop. If you are picking your markers to blend with that, one of the most frequent things that I see happen is people are drawn to this, BG4. And then when they pick a partner, if you can only pick one blending partner, because really the markers meld together and that's what gives you the shading that usually attracts people to alcohol marker coloring, I would recommend that you go lighter and that you pick a shade that's a little bit lighter than the one that you love so that you can create highlight. You can always, the dye in the markers is translucent. So you can always kind of layer a couple of layers to build a little bit of depth, but it's really hard to get to those lighter shades with just, the BG24. So a lot of times I see where people will buy, they'll say, oh, I picked all my partners and I loved BG24, and they come to the higher numbers to do their shading, which I use the whole range and I love them. But then they don't have really anything to blend to their highlight. So I like to pick them in threes. I like to pick the one I like, and I buy one, that's darker, and then one that's a little bit lighter. But if you're only picking two, which is fine when you're starting out and you want, a couple, or you things from a lot of different spots on the wheel, I would maybe advise you to look toward the lighter shade that's going to blend with that. I think that it's easier to, usually it's a little bit easier to blend when someone's just learning. It lets you create a highlight, and it's a little bit easier to cover up mistakes with those lighter as well. So, and I have to do more than my share of mistake covering. Trust me.
I think that's really
Trust
good
me.
advice that is helpful, because I know not everybody's able to just buy the whole set. We do have Debbie here who says, I don't think I can do just the 32 new ones. I want them all. Is that normal? Asking for a friend. But I know not everyone
Well,
is able to do all of them. So I think that's really good advice to pick the lighter, because if you go darker, it's harder to move backwards and get that nice highlight. It kind of can overwhelm what was your favorite color.
right. And then then you tend to think, well, what did I do wrong? And it's not anything that you as an art, you as the artist and the creator, you didn't really do anything wrong. You're just working with what you're working with. So I saw a question early on, and it was about the split chart, which I printed out. Here it is. I have turned it upside down. So this is another one of the charts that's available for download. I know that Taylor shared this in her download section. We got it updated. This is a chart that we originally had for the 128 colors. It's been updated to include 80 half circles. And if you're just feeling kind of familiar or just learning about OLO and joining us for one of the first times, OLO is a little bit of a marker than what you may have used before, because OLO is a marker that is about 4 inches long. This is a full marker's worth of ink inside this barrel. This happens to be RV 1.7. I think, isn't that the color you said, Lollipop, RV 1.5 and 1.7, Taylor?
1.5, yes, love that.
Yeah. So when you your markers, unless you purchase, Taylor has some specially curated bundles of her own colors that she's selected. We might be waiting for stock on some of those, but then she also has open stock. And when you purchase open stock, you're going to get what's going to look like a half marker. So it's going to come to you and you'll be like, oh, what am I going to do with that? Well, for every 2 markers you purchase, you're also going to get a connector ring. It will be black. I happen to have white on my new colors just so I can somewhat try and keep my wits about me when I'm picking them out of my little tote here. So typically you would buy 2 markers and you're going to put 2 markers together on 1 connector ring. So I have mine set up with a brush and a chisel. I use them for a lot of different demonstrations. I use them to color a lot of different things. And I work with a lot of different styles of paper craft stores and fine art stores. So I do use the brush and the chisel. A lot of times in paper crafting, what's really popular about the marker is that paper crafters love the brush. So now I have that RV 1.5 and the RV 1.7, and I'm going to put those together on a single connector ring. And the way that you would use this chart then is I would come over here, and you have to know this is a sample. I wouldn't, I would never just start coloring in. I would kind of have a master plan before I started. But I'm going to add the 1.5 on one end and the 1.7 on another. And then I'm going to label these on this chart. If this is how my markers are set up, no matter how I store them and what I see first, I can go to my chart and I know, okay, I'm looking for that lollipop color, RV 1.5. So I'm either looking for RV 1.5 at the end or RV 1.7, depending on how I dropped it into my container or my storage rack. So this chart becomes very helpful. There was a question first thing this morning about would we have a recommended way to fill this in, and I will commit to working on that for some suggestions for you, because sometimes I do take them apart and I travel. It's nice to only have half the space. The little thing that I'm using today doesn't even hold all of my pins, but if I had them connected end to end, it would hold all 80 and 160 colors. So I'll kind of take a look at this and work with Taylor, and maybe we'll see if we can come up with just a recommendation. And this is one of the taglines for it's your marker, your way. So all of these things are just recommendations or suggestions of things you can try. Yes, as Taylor said, you do you. You find what works for you, and there's no right or wrong answer on that. So
I think we have quite a few questions on what container you have your markers in. Is it like a Lazy Susan style, like a makeup? Oh, I
yes,
see
it's like a little
bright room. That's from Target.
It is a Target Bright Room thing, and my friend Nicole, she told me that it was working for her. And I was like, okay, well, it is working for me. So I wish, I actually sent my husband, there's 2 sizes. And I said, I think I need the bigger one. He said, that won't even fit on your desk. So I have the smaller one and it doesn't hold all of them, but it is nice to have them here. And if you had, you know, so we'll see. The jury's still out on whether I'll use this long term or not, because like I said, it doesn't hold my entire collection. So how about if we color?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, let's do it. So we're going to, this is our card we're going to make today. And we're going to, I did a lot of the prep work ahead of time. I hope that's okay. I kind of cheated a little bit because I didn't know how much time we'd have. I wanted to be able to talk.
Yes,
So
that is a-okay. I think everyone that is here today learning about the markers knows how to stamp the images that they want to stamp. So we should
right.
be good.
So I'm going to work with Sketchbook Florals. So this is one of the sets that I illustrated for Taylor a couple of years ago. It was a kit, actually, wasn't it? We released that one in a kit. So it was a ton of fun. And I thought, well, I'm going to bring that out. So set that off to the side. I did all of my die cutting. I didn't necessarily do my stamping. So I do have to stamp my images. I thought for sure someone's going to ask me what ink that we use. And I use the Oreo hybrid ink. So when I get ready to stamp my images.
While you're stamping, I will just issue an apology to all the Susans. I did call it a lazy Susan. I think that's maybe that name has been changed to I don't know. She says I prefer turntable. That's what Susan said. So
well, yeah. Yes, apologies to the Susans. So I didn't know what to really call it either, right?
I know, and I really don't know where that came from. It's kind of like the whole Karen movement, and I feel bad for the Karens.
I know. So if, just to let you know kind of what I'm doing, if you've not seen someone set a jig in their MISTI before, I have pre-die cut all of my pieces that I'm going to color. And then I have stamped it on the bed of my MISTI. And so there's my piece. I know exactly now where that's going to fall. Now I'm going to take my negative piece from the die cut. I'm going to drop my die cut piece in there.
Can you move your
hopefully I did not.
There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Hopefully I did not shift while not too bad. And I usually give it 2 because I need to re-ink my pads.
I think we have the top of your stand in the picture now.
So, sorry, did it move?
There we go. That's good. That's better.
Sorry about that. Let me see.
That's okay. You get it settled. Yeah, I love that tip.
You know what I'm trying to. I was trying to, Taylor, I was trying to watch Facebook to change my screen, and you know we have a little bit of a delay, so it wasn't working. I was like, why isn't it working here?
I know it does take about 30 seconds to actually see the change. So I know there have been some people asking about storing the markers, whether vertical or horizontal matters. If you just want to touch on that quick.
Yep, whatever works for you. The ink flow system that's inside OLO is a little bit different than other markers, other alcohol markers. So it's whatever works in your space. The caps are airtight, and if you like them upright, if you like them horizontal, whatever kind of works for your space. So
that is nice. I like not having to think about, am I doing it the right way? Is this going to ruin them? Just knowing that I can do it either way.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this is my last one that I'm going to stamp, and then we'll get down to business. So, good.
I know you said, so if I'm jumping the gun on this, then just tell me, but I know you said you were going to talk a little bit about paper selection. We had a couple people asking about Sugar Cube versus Express It, and I think that's a plan you're planning to talk about.
Yes. So I am using, what I'm using this morning is Express It, which you have in the store. And I use Sugar Cube a lot. The two, there's just a little bit of a difference between the two. And there's really, it's just whatever I seem to pick up, whatever is handy to me. Both of them blend beautifully. The Express It is a little bit, it's more of a little bit smoother finish on the cardstock, and it holds the ink to me just a little bit tighter. So if I'm using the Sugar Cube, I know that it may have a tendency to just feather on me slightly. So really, I think on paper, one of the things that I think you should try is try a couple of different things, because everybody seems to have their own personal preference for what works best for them. I was going to see if there's a little bit of a difference in the color of the paper. So this is a Sugar Cube base, and this is Express It that the flowers cut out. So you can see that there's just a little bit of a difference. The Sugar Cube is a little bit creamier. So it's really just either one works beautifully. I know you use Sugar Cube almost exclusively, Taylor, don't you? And it blends beautifully for you too.
I
Or the
do,
foilet
and
panels.
the foilet panels are printed on Sugar Cube, and so I think I just grabbed for that mostly because then I know whatever I stamp my sentiment on will match. Because the difference in paper can really catch your eye if you're stamping your sentiment on one and then
Yes.
coloring on another. So I would just recommend, if you're going to color on the Express It, then stamp your sentiment also on the Express It.
Yes, yes, to kind of keep that tone the same. So
Yeah.
now on this card, I think you'll see too that I used, I'm going to stamp on the Express It, but I'm going to use a Sugar Cube base, and I think it looks fine. So I'm going to start here with two colors of blue. This is B0.3 and B0.2. And one thing that I like to do is I start with the darker color. That's not always how I've used alcohol markers, but I start with the darker color and I just bring in a little bit of shading down in the depths or where I think I want the darkest part of my image to be. And then I will just feather right over the top of that with my lighter color up to the white space, up to the top of the flower because your ambient light would be kind of catching the flower petals at the top, and they would be really thin, and they're going to have less color to them if you go out and walk through your garden. So I like to keep the darker colors down where all of those petals tend to bunch together. And I usually do one or two at a time. So, and I know you kind of had talked about that same trick on Tuesday in your live, Taylor, when you were doing the leaves, right? Like leaving just little bit of white space up toward the top so that it gives you almost another element of color in the shading process, right?
Yeah, I
So
think it's an easier, for me, it's a simpler way to add a highlight is just to leave it very feathery at
leave it white from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Because once you kind of cover it up, it's, there's ways to use we call it zero. Some other markers call it colorless blender solution. There's ways to go in and add highlight with that, but it's never the same as pure untouched paper, in my opinion. So I like leaving it white from the beginning too. So you'll notice that as I'm working with these, I'm kind of have the markers that I'm working with, and I just leave the caps off of them. One thing that's unique to OLO is that this is a completely closed-in system. So even though I can connect two markers together and have different ends on the back, so I can have a brush on one end and I can have a chisel on the other end, there's no interior system that runs that ink together. Each one of these is a single component. So one of the things that can happen is in other markers that I've used in the past, I've been really careful to keep them capped. And so I was constantly pulling the caps off, putting the caps on, pulling the caps off, putting the caps off. Well, it's almost like priming it. If you're working with a couple of markers in a very short period of time and you're constantly capping and recapping, you can end up kind of pulling excess ink out of the barrel. And so while I'm working, I just kind of leave the cap off of the 1 or 2, 3 colors that I'm using. And that kind of helps prevent it from being quite so juicy. If that would be something that you experienced, I would recommend you might try that. If I have a couple of markers out, and I'm working with maybe 5 or 6, sometimes I'll just lay them into the cap on my desk and not click them, but cap them, but not really necessary either. So, and then if you lose track of what you're holding in your hand, you've always got the color number right there on the side label too. So, but
It's looking pretty.
I love those blues. So now I've done all of my shading here. Once I get done, if I think I want more depth in the bottom, and like this would be that situation where I said if you only picked 2 markers and you want it to be a little bit darker, once this is dry, I can come in and I can add a little bit of shading that I might not blend out. I just leave it like that. And this is where I said, if you stack color on color on color, you can get a little bit of depth. So it's easier to add dark than it is to try and go back to the light. And so I will just kind of come back, and I could fiddle with this all day long. And one of the things that I love about alcohol is you can always rework it. So I could let it sit there and then come back tomorrow and fiddle with it some more if I wanted to. So I'm going to add some shading on the stems. Again, this is G5.3 and G5.1. And like I said, I start with the dark. Also a light hand. So if you're new to alcohol markers, practice, just get a feel, pick up some paper and just practice making some brush strokes and get a feel for, how wide you can be if you're really on the side of the brush. And I think that's helpful too. I think about, especially when I'm in these smaller areas, I think about it like maybe I'm dusting color onto the marker. I'm not taking my nib and grinding it into the paper to really saturate that paper and go through, I'm just dusting the color on. And that helps you be able to blend a little bit easier as well if you have those light layers. And all of that is just practice. It's just, stamping out images, picking them out, practicing with them, coloring a lot of different things, getting a feel for how you're going to hold the marker in your hand. You had a great tip on Tuesday too about turning your paper instead of trying to change the way that you're holding the marker.
Yes, that's really
Right.
helpful. I don't know why sometimes those little tips that are just sort of, they seem silly, but then somebody will think, I never thought of it that way. I wondered why I wasn't able to get the angle I wanted, as I'm trying to make my hand go in directions it doesn't want to go.
Right. And so, yeah, so I do that a lot too, just kind of turn things around. And probably these are small enough that I can do them more than one at a time. Really depends, because what happens is the blending, that smooth blending that you like, that happens when the paper is wet. when the ink is still wet. So that's why I usually work really small bits so that I can keep everything wet, and then it will just blend and meld the colors as I work back.
I think Mary has a question. I'm not sure I understand it. She says, if you're using the marker with the brush handle, do you need to do anything special, or do you only do that when you have two markers attached to each other? I think maybe she's talking about leaving the caps off.
I leave my caps off no matter what I'm doing, because whatever you have in the handle on the back has zero bearing on your marker, because this is completely closed. This is all self-contained.
Yes.
In that capsule. So that's a good question. It is a good question.
Julie's asking if the markers come with a tip, or do you purchase the tips separately?
They come with a tip. So they come with brushes, is what Taylor carries in her store. There are chisels available. I did see a question earlier, someone asking about a bullet nib, and that is no secret. We are working on a bullet nib, and I'm excited for that because it'll, some people like really small images, and so looking forward to that. But it comes when you purchase it with a nib on it. Now there are refill cartridges available that don't have a nib, but you would use that when you get ready to re-ink. And what you would do is just purchase a refill cartridge, which would be this black portion. You take your nib from the spent marker, move it to the refill cartridge, move your cap, and you're done. So there's no kind of weighing or dripping or mess making.
I love that. I love that refill process.
Yes, right. I think, statistically, people like the idea of refilling, but I don't know that a lot of people actually do it because it's a mess.
Yes, and I would say that was true.
Right?
I refillable markers for years and years. Even had the refills, and it was like pulling teeth to get me to actually sit down and do it. And so, yeah, I didn't do it very often. Probably not as often as I should in order to get full use out of my markers.
Yeah. You're not alone. You're not alone. I hated doing that. In one of my lives, in one of my former lives, I did a lot of travel teaching. And so I traveled, and I had a lot of sets of markers that I was responsible for maintaining. And man, my kids, they did not like it when it was marker cleanup refill time, because everybody got a color and everybody got a Q-tip.
I can't wait till my girls get older and they talk about, oh, I hated when mom made us do this.
Right. Ashley and Courtney would be like, and their friends weren't even immune. Like the friends would come to play, and I was like, oh, we're refilling markers today.
Everybody jump in.
You want to go to the pool? We've got 2 hours worth of work to do. So I am really glad that that's a part of my former life.
Yes. Now instead of refill, it's replace.
It's just replace the nib and replace the cap, and I'm off to the races. So now here's another thing that you could do, and the glass mat. If I'm working on the glass mat and I've got paper underneath me, I usually do work with a piece of paper underneath me, just because if my ink seeps through the bottom of my image, hits the glass mat, and then I move my image around, because we talk about paper. If it gets re-wet, it can seep back up and then discolor. So I usually keep a piece of paper underneath me when I work. But if you get into some of these smaller images and you don't feel like you have room that you can really bring in a dark marker and then flick it out, just scribble some alcohol on your surface, and you can kind of you scribble the darker color. So this is the darker color here. And then lighter color is a paintbrush, and then I just will pick that up and then flick it out. So that is a little bit easier sometimes, especially if you're in a small area, that you can still get some variation in your color, but you don't have to really. And as you draw your marker out, it goes back to the original color, and then you can kind of feather over it. So that's just one of my little tips.
So I think I have one question that I've been trying to keep track of. Have we answered all the questions? And there is one question that we have not answered, and I know it probably doesn't have an answer, but I want to ask it anyway.
Okay.
As someone who does product development and knows kind of the process that it takes to bring a product to the market, that's why I think you might not have an answer. But someone has asked, how often will new colors come out? Maybe you have a plan for that, or maybe not, or maybe you can't share it, or any of those things, but there's the question.
Yeah. We're already working on another color launch for 2025. And I think we're going to try and bring even more than 32 next time. So one of the things that's specific to, kind of specific to this, not just this product, but art supplies, every time you add colors, it's hard. It can be difficult for your retailers to bring those in, and storage solutions, and how do people store the markers? And every time that changes, then it sends you kind of into a tailspin. So I think that the next time we launch, we'll probably try and do a little bit more than the 32. And that way the retail displays, there's just so much that goes into it when you manufacture, because you're thinking about your customer, and your customer is a lot of different people.
Yeah.
It's everybody that's here on the live today, but then it's all of the different stores that I work with and how they're able to showcase the product in their space. So I can't say how frequently, but I know next year to bring you some more. And like I said, I think more than 32 at that time. So how's that for dancing around?
You did great.
So, okay, I'm going to kind of put this together. Now, if we weren't on the live and we had endless time, but we're almost out of, I know people have got other things they want to do today than watch paint dry. So,
oh, stop. This is way better than watching paint dry.
Okay. Here I have the wood slice, the big wood slice background. This came out probably about, I don't know, maybe about a month and a half ago. Did it come out with father's manly stuff?
Manly masculine release at the beginning of May. So about a month ago.
Yep. So look how big this thing is. This is awesome because let's see if it's in the corner. So it's 6 to 6. So you get a lot of real estate on that, and I love it. And so I've got that into my Misty. Now, I am weird. I use salt water. Heather is drawn to her toffee, and I tend to use saltwater taffy just like my neutral. So
that is true. I know there was a time period when we were unable to get the saltwater taffy for a while, and it was like weekly messages from Lori. Is the saltwater taffy back in yet? Is it
right? Is it yet? And like when it came back in, I may have bought 6 packages.
Yeah, it's been back for a while now. So you're back.
I just love it because it's so soft. It's just so beautiful. So this, so I've got saltwater taffy ink here, and I dropped my little press tool before we were coming live. And I'm not sure. Don't stress, just press. Okay.
So
there we go.
I've got some more questions coming in that I think are fairly easy to answer because we've kind of touched on them already. But someone asked if the markers are refillable, and you had shared the refill We talked about how you replace your cartridge with the ink in it and take the nib from your spent marker and move it over to the refill, and then just screw it onto your um, double-ended marker if that's how you have them.
Yes.
And she's also asking how long do they last, which I think is just a question based on how often you use them. So I'm not
Yes.
sure.
So each end, each end of the marker has as much ink. So these are, I would consider these to be a high quality brand. They're manufactured in Japan. They've got tight air seals. They have beautiful nibs to them. It's a very high quality product. The interior of each one is equivalent to a full-size marker of comparable brands on the market. So when you put end to end, you have 2 times the ink in there. So I think that, yes, how long it lasts is relative to how often you're using them. But there is a lot of ink inside. The other thing that's unique about this marker, we didn't really talk about this today because we were spending a lot of time talking about the new colors, but if you've been on any of the other lives, we've talked about the fact that this is a free ink technology inside. So it has as much ink in one half as a comparable quality marker. And because it's a free flow ink system, you're going to be able to use 92% of the ink that's inside, which is about 25% more than other markers, because most markers have, all other markers have a felt wadding inside, which eats up a lot of the ink. So,
Yeah, I think that answers one of the other, or that's one of the answers to another question that has been asked, specifically how these markers are different from other markers on the market. And some questions specifically about Copics. I know a lot of people have those, and you have always said,
yes.
they work well together with Copics. It's the
Oh,
same
yeah, for
type
sure.
of ink, it's just a different delivery system for the ink.
Correct. Correct. They definitely play very well together. And I think when you look at the ranges, that's also one thing that we were mindful of when we developed the color range, was to fill in gaps that you don't find in other brands. So purples, pinks, yellows that just really aren't available through other marker brands. So that way you can kind of accent and play around with and add to what you already have. So here I just stamped a sentiment. The sentiment came from Sketchbook Bouquet. It says, "May hope fill your heart today."
Oh, I like that sentiment.
So, okay. And I've already put my card together. So if you ever see my samples, I like a lot of layers, and I really like a lot of layers that are very similar colors. So I have a lot of cardstock here. Actually, it's just one sheet and then the white. So, and then I'm just going to play around with my flowers and situate them on here. I'm probably going to glue them down off camera.
It's beautiful.
And I will post a picture later, but there's kind of what we got going on.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you so much,
yeah.
Lori. I always
Thank
love
you so much.
learning more from you and hearing about all of your tips and tricks. I think everybody learned something here today. Everybody's saying, learned so much, great instructions. Thank you. Of course, if you missed
Oh,
anything at the beginning, you guys can always watch after this ends. You can rewatch the tips and answers to all of your questions will be answered, hopefully. So thank you, Lori, for
yeah.
joining
And
us.
we, yeah. One more thing I was just going to say, we didn't really talk so long or much about the technical aspect, but you and I went live for an hour about a year ago, and that's on your YouTube channel too,
Yeah,
on the Tailored Expressions YouTube, where someone, if you wanted to rewatch, I mean, and learn a little bit more, we talk a little bit more about the technicality and the difference and the innovation inside the
yeah.
marker. So,
I think I saw
oh,
that pop up on our most watched list. So people are finding it as you have released these new colors. I think it's named something like Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About OLO Markers with Lori Craig. So,
How about some tea? How about some tea?
oh, some tea. Yes, if you have been here all along, then you stayed long enough to see the tea for Tuesday. Lori, this is your first time spilling tea, I think.
This is my first time to spill the tea. Here we go.
Oh, yay! I love it. There it
I'll have to
was.
I'll have to call Heather and Susan and see if I did it right.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
So
thanks for having me, Taylor.
we are so happy that you were able to join us today. I'm going to switch back screens so that you guys I can say a proper farewell to you all. And thanks again for joining us today, for coming to learn from Lori and getting that little spill of the tea today. I hope you tune in on Tuesday for our next release. So that's when I will be seeing you. Have a wonderful week.